Hello, I'm BJ from Hearns Hobbies and welcome to another one of my unboxings. This time round I have this new Airfix release. Now this is not a really new tool kit, but it is a new version with new decals. This is the very popular Tiger Moth in 1/48 scale, and this was retooled by Airfix in 2009, I think. I think that's right, my memory's sort of a bit blank at the moment. But what we have here are some new markings, which we'll see from the top here. We have markings here from 1965, so quite a modern colour scheme for the Royal Navy. And then also another one from 1940, which is for the training around about World War II. Now the Tiger Moth, if you're not familiar, is a very, very popular aircraft, very well used and even used today. It was first developed in the 1930s and it was developed to be de Havilland's best aircraft at the time. It's a biplane and very, very stable and used for training purposes. So you can see here we've got the instructor and the trained pilot. And these became very prevalent during the Second World War because many people needed to be trained for the fight. And ever since they've been used, and even really vintage versions of this aircraft are still being flown today. So you think about, they're going to be 80 years old, and the overall design is so good that they're still really popular. Now, some pilots have said that the aircraft itself was very, very easy to fly, but very difficult to fly well, so it worked perfectly as a trainer. Now let's have a look at this kit. What do we get? I guess this is what you call a small to medium sized box. 48 scale of a biplane, there's not many parts involved. Let's have a closer look at the sprue. What do we get? Okay, so we've got 3 sets of grey sprue and 1 clear. And that's for the windscreen, and windscreens are really small on these. Let's go through each part. Let's go through the big bits first, I think. Let's start with the fuselage and tail sections. Now, as a fairly new kit, has it got the year on this? No. But I would consider this the Renaissance period of Airfix. I think I've mentioned it before that Airfix have relied upon their very early molds for sales, and they have made bits and pieces to modernize their kits, but they've never really produced a lot until recently. So this is a period when they started retooling, and this is what I call the Airfix Renaissance period, and all the newer stuff we see now I call post-Renaissance, because it feels like there's been a couple of steps on the journey of where Airfix is now. And when we have a closer look at this, you see that these are actually quite nice molds. They're not the same as any of the Japanese manufacturers. Japanese manufacturers have prided themselves on being expert tool makers, and they've actually always had very thin components to emphasize the detail. Over here you can see there's some interior detail, but all the plastic is still fairly thick, so it does look a little bit clunky. Now the advantage of having this thicker mold is, one, it's easy to cut the mold, and then secondly, there's less chances of this actually warping, like these large parts, than say a thin mold. So when you're building a Japanese style kit, and you have large fuselage parts, you have to be very careful when you're gluing them together and make sure they're aligned. But these should be easier to deal with for a beginner to an intermediate builder. Okay, let's get a closer look at these. Right, so there's the interior of the cockpits. You do have the engine detail there as well, that's the other half. But let's look at the interiors first, and you see what I mean by it's a bit chunky. The edge is a little bit rounded, and there again that helps it actually come out of the mold. So you can see that it is less crisp than a general Japanese type kit. But when you go over here, you see the horizontal stabilizer. It does have some very nice tensioned skin finish. You see how it's There's tension and you can see the ribbing showing through. We spin this around. So here's the actual outer of the fuselage. You see the fold down doors, the hinges. You do have engraved detail, whereas the early kits quite often were raised details. And really, I mean, there was a time, say in the 90s, 2000s, when engraved details were king. Well, actually, no real thing has only engraved details. The engraved details simply help with weathering and panel lines. And that was a big thing in that period. That's when it was sort of starting to boom, where people wanted to do all those effects. But naturally, there will be raised details as well. So the ultimate kit will have both. And you can see here, there's definitely both here. Some of the engine detail, and then you also have the other side as well. Got some of the engine cowling right there. There's another part of the horizontal stabilizer. That appears to be another piece of cowl. And then you've got your vertical stabilizer there, again with this tension skin effect. So it looks very nice. Okay, let's move on to the next sprue, which will be the wings. Okay, and the wings are molded in a single piece, which is great. And when I say single piece, you've got the top section of the wing is a biplane, so you've got two. You've got an upper and a lower. And the underside is all in one. So in the past, these sections would be molded in two parts, then you have to make sure you align them properly and make sure that they dried with the right alignment. And you can see here how there's the dihedral that you need to match if you glue these things together. So it's not cut in half here, it's not cut in half through the center, it's all in one piece. So you've got a lot more chance of success in getting these lined up. So dihedral on the front and, well, the top and bottom. And particularly with these biplanes, that's the hardest part to align, getting the wings to match up. So we've got the inserts here where the struts are going to go into, and they're quite long sections rather than pinpoints. So that's going to help align the two sections as well. We have the propellers there, so there's options of two different propellers. And again, we have that stress skin effect. Let's get in tight and have a closer look. How's that focus? There we go. So it's interesting, I've focused in right on that injection pin, and it's on a spot where you won't notice it. And again, right there. So quite a lot of thought put into that. Nothing worse than trying to fill in an injection pin mark when you've got this really delicate organic shapes. You can see just on the leading edge too, how the additional ribs there are showing through. It's a really nice touch. Okay, and if we look on the bottom, where you'll be expecting more injection pins, it's actually really clean. And here you might be able to see that really fine detail or the texture. So that's a nice touch. And again, there you go. All right, so here's our two props. All right, you got that one with the clipped ends, and then this one with the curved tips. I don't know what the differences are, but I'm sure the instruction manual will explain all of that. And then we're left with the last of the grey sprue, quite large. This has all the smaller bits, and we have another prop again. Okay, so there's three props. You have all the struts. This is all cockpit detail. You've got the wheels here, which are quite nice. They've actually been weighted. So it's good for people that are going to have these parked. Not so good for people that are going to have these mid-air. But I think it's a lot easier to convert a weighted wheel, which has got the flat on it, to totally round, than to actually convert a totally round one to a weighted wheel. Because when you sand them down flat, they don't look quite right. Okay, let's get in a bit tighter and see how the details look on here. Alright, so here's the wheels. Where are they? I've lost them there. Okay, see how they're weighted? And weighted means the bottoms are flat and the edges are bulged. And that gives a better impression of the weight or the mass of this model. So just by looking at all these finer parts, you can tell how they are a little bit on the chunkier side compared to a Japanese kit. But nevertheless, you're still going to get a very good kit out of this, as in a build. There's a seat. So with careful painting, you'll be able to bring out all the details you need. Get the instrument panels, your joysticks. There's the other seat. That I'm guessing is a wind deflector. Then we get into our struts. There's our wind struts. And there's that long section which is going to help fit into that recess in the wing, help align those struts. Then you've got individual struts. A lot of parts of the engine. There's the center of a wing. More struts. There's the other prop. So that's got a fully curved tip. Got exhausts. And then some other bits and pieces as we go. Okay, so after that, what have we got left? All we got is the windscreen. So here's the windscreen. And we just see it's a two pieces in the packet here. Let me see if I can move that so it's easier to see. There we go. Got two windscreen right inside. Okay, so that's all the plastic parts that we're going to be looking at. Let's have a look at some of the documentation. Alright, so here's our manual with the decals slipped inside. Put those over here. Alright, and there's our two versions. Actually, that's one version. That's a 1940 type training. So that's the Elementary and Reserve Flying Training School, Royal Air Force Ansty, Warwickshire, England in October 1940, and your colour chart there. These would be the Humbrol numbers, but it'd be very easy for you to find alternatives in any brand that you prefer. And then over here we have the more modern 1965 Britannia flight, Britannia Royal Navy College, Roborough, Plymouth, Devon, July the 1st, 65. Last biplanes to land on the British aircraft carrier, the Eagle. And very different insignia and colour scheme with that one. Okay, let's have a look at the inside of the manual. Okay, we have some information here in the different languages. You got English, French and German. Some basic specs, speed and such of the real aircraft. We also have Spanish, and SV would be Swedish, I'm guessing. And then there's a few more languages here. We've got a legend of the symbols as you build, and then we're getting into the building stage. So step one, all the way through here, is building up the cockpit with the two seats. That module is sandwiched into one fuselage, adding the exhaust onto the engine, instrument clusters, and the alignment of those. The instructions are quite nice. They're CAD drawings. Here we've got the option of cutting the doors so you can have them open or not. So leaving them closed or having them open. Over here is an option for opening up these holes in case you want to use a stand for in-flight display. So if you do want to do that, then you just need to open those up first. So that's an Airfix option. And then we're sandwiched two fuselage halves together. You've got a little bit of cowling going on, more engine detail, the engine mounts. We've got the top of the engine cowl, the front and the sides. So pretty much you're covering up most of the engine, or the option here is you can leave this panel open so the engine detail can be seen from the side. And that's a frontal view with the panel open. Okay, so here's an optional part, as in that long section is actually a jig. There you go. So I recently reviewed the new Tamiya Leopard 2 A7V, and that had quite a few jigs in it. And jigs is not a new thing, it's been around for a while. Quite often it's seen in tanks. You've got track jigs. This one is actually a panel jig for your optional horizontal stabilizer. So A version uses this extended version, which means you need to cut the section off using this jig. Or if you're using or making the older version, then you don't need to cut anything. So here, you just need to fit this over the top, and they're indicating using it as a filing jig, and you just need to file that flat section away, and then that'll fit on. So very clever. All right, from there we've got the vertical stabilizer, the lower wing plane. You've got struts going in, which are from the fuselage. Building of the top wing with those two struts I talked about earlier, and then marrying the top wing to the fuselage and the lower wing. And that's the part where you need to take a bit of care so that it's all aligned properly. You don't want them, looking skew-whiff or on funny angles. We've got some skids on the bottom. Main undercarriage. The wheels going on. And then your choices of the props. We've got the instrument cluster sun covers going on, the windscreens. The doors, if you cut them off, they're getting glued on. Over here you've got your panel for your engine, either open or closed. We've got here, and now there's some additional instructions for advanced modelers. So this is actually to do wire rigging, which is really nice because wire rigging actually adds a lot of interest, I think, if you can do it, because it is quite fiddly. So they've got the plans here on how to get all the rigging put into place. So there's multiple instructions here. And the best sort of thing to use would be easy line, I guess, which is an elastic line, or you could use a really fine copper, or some people like using really fine steel because that's totally straight and it always looks tensioned. So that's up to you. That's a choice for you to choose. And then there again, we've got these markings. So let's have a look at the decals. Take that protective cover off. Wow, the Royal Navy ones are super bright. They're actually fluorescent. I don't think the camera can pick up the fluorescence there, but let's have a closer look. So we've got two markings. These are really colourful ones, the ones for the 1965 version for the Royal Navy. And then most of these lower ones would be the 1940 version. So very nice. And the decals, if I can spin around and try and get some reflections onto them, they are quite thin and they're matte finish. Okay, so there we go. That is my open box review of the Airfix 1/48 scale, the Havilland Tiger Moth. And this is a new release kit with brand new decals. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed that open boxing. And if you'd like to see more like this, please think about subscribing, and if you've got any questions or you've got some ideas on what you'd like to see next, please leave that in the comments below. So thank you very much.